and welcome to Conversations with Passion, the show that brings you the experts from around the world to share ideas, best practices, and their story. On today's show, we have actor, author, and speaker Brian Benson.
Step out of their comfort zones and to follow their intuition.
The Learning Forum with Mary Jane Allen.
We're just not seeing the truth of things.
Acupuncture entrepreneur Angela Ray.
I have a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit.
Entrepreneurship expert and legend Michael Gerber.
Discover your dream, your vision, your purpose, and your mission.
And much more. But first, here is your host, Corey Poirier.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of the Conversations with Passion radio show. I'm your host, Corey Poirier, and as we jump into this very episode, I just want to share this quick thought. I actually presented at a regional conference about a week and a half ago on the theme of surviving and thriving in a new economy, and you'll notice I didn't say tough economy, or I didn't say good economy, and why I say that is because one of the things I've discovered in recent years is giving all the changes that we're seeing, whether that's related to social media, the fact that we have become our own media company if we choose to be, the fact that if you remember from our last episode, I talked about the fact that we now have the option to be niche famous, even if it means we're not going to become mass famous. The fact that these things have all been changing so rapidly, I believe, has actually changed the economy as well, to the point where we're never going to be in what we would call a traditional economy. You know, we just used to say we were in a tough economy or we were in a thriving economy. I don't believe that really applies anymore. I think we're in a new economy, and that's not a good or a bad thing. I mean, I think in a new economy you can thrive like never before, and I think in a new economy you can fail like never before. So it really comes down to, you know, how you choose to approach that economy. And what I'm hoping is in this new economy that you'll realize the importance of learning from the best of the best, for the importance of becoming a lifelong learner, the importance of finding ways to continue to develop personally and professionally so that you are ahead of the class rather than behind the class. And reason I say all these things is because I hope that our show, Conversations with Passion, with all the great high achievers we've been fortunate enough to bring on the show, I'm hoping our little show can help you do that. So this episode, much like other ones, I'm hoping gives you a lot of that unique and exclusive insight you can take to thrive in the new economy that we are now in. And I hope you enjoy this episode that gives you some of that great insight. And until next time, I'm Corey Poirier.
First up, we have multiple award-winning self-help author and filmmaker Brian Benson, who has also completed over 50 triathlons. To learn more, go to gbrianbenson.com. Here is Brian Benson.
Thank you so much, Brian, for joining us on the Conversations with Passion radio show. And perhaps, Brian, maybe we can start by you giving us a bit of a background overview just for our listeners who may not be familiar with yourself so far.
Everything kind of really changed for me about 5 years ago. I was running my family's business. We had a big golf center, a driving range, and a retail store and a little golf course. And I just knew that I was supposed to be doing something else with my life. I wasn't sure what it was, and I just had kind of stopped growing there, and I knew I needed to make a change. So I had a chat with my dad, and he was understanding, and then we decided to sell the business. And even though I had no idea what I was going to do after, I left it. And it took about a year between having that conversation with him and actually turning over the business and handing over the keys to the new owners. And the last 6 months, I was just really struggling, trying to find balance in my life. And I'm kind of a driven person. I'm in a laid-back way, and I knew that I would need to find some things to help me stay in balance. And so I came up with a short list of 5 things, and it really, really helped me. And my intuition was telling me that I was supposed to kind of expand that list and make it into a book, although I had never really written anything before. So that's what I did, and I self-published it, and I kind of had this little vision there'd be a couple stickers, and it ended up winning a couple of awards, and it just pointed me in this whole new direction. And so, you know, in the last 5 years, I've written 3 other books and kind of found myself in many different creative endeavors, such as acting, which has helped me kind of put some other positive things out there as well. And it's really been an interesting ride after I just kind of followed my intuition and left the business, even though I didn't know where I was headed.
Wow. I mean, very, very cool stuff. And one of the things that I took from that, Brian, before I kind of jump into, the book and what it's led to now, I'd love to talk about what you mentioned. You mentioned a key word there, which is balance. And it's a question I get these days more often than ever before. And it seems like that people that have kind of discovered their passion, for them, balance is not the same as people who haven't. So, people that haven't discovered their passion yet, it seems like balance is work begins, then ends, life begins, then ends. And people that have discovered their passion, there seems to be no end. They just kind of flow from one to the next because they found a purpose in life. Would you agree with that statement? And I guess secondly, what are your thoughts on, true balance versus maybe what you thought it was, or is it the same?
Well, it's very interesting. Initially I probably just, like everybody else, just didn't really think too much about balance. And when this book kind of came through me and I was kind of working on it myself, I learned a lot. I mean, for me, I think balance is just the foundation for everything. When we're truly in balance, I don't know, we're living a proactive life. We can, instead of a reactive life. And when we're living a proactive life, there's a lot of benefits. We have more energy. I think things flow smoother for us. We're better able to be our true selves. But most importantly for me, I learned that I can hear my intuition come through a lot clearer. And I've always been pretty good at living my life via my intuition, even kind of before I really realized what it was. So for me, finding balance and doing the things that I need to do to stay in balance just helps me stay on track and hear those hunches and nudges and intuitive hits, which I follow. And that has just been my guidance going forward.
No, that's very cool. And it's cool to see that you kind of discovered that it was maybe something different than you had thought, or like you said, hadn't put a lot of thought to it. So to actually come around a way of thinking on it. And so, one of the things that I'm very curious about, Brian, I noticed that you're, when we were setting this up, I noticed that you're more than, let's say, a speaker or an author. You're multifaceted. And that's something that intrigues me because, I noticed actor, and I've done some acting, and I was filmmaker, and I've directed some short films. Author, I've been doing the author thing for a while. Speaker, that's kind of the core of it all for me. And then also even a musician, and I'm working on my 4th CD. And one of the things that I get the question on all the time is, Corey, what do you do? Like, what are you actually? People want to put a title on it. So what do you do? And then also, people saying, isn't that unfocused? And yet you talk about the power of focus. So maybe instead of me, because people on the show have heard my thoughts on this before, but what are your thoughts on that whole thing about, why you tackle various things, and what does that give you, and do you, do you see them all kind of circling one sort of hub, or, what are your thoughts on the idea that you obviously are more than just a speaker or an author, where some people would more than happy to be just say, I'm a speaker and that's what I do?
Yeah, wow. We sound very similar. We have a lot in common. For me, everything's still kind of evolving for me, and I've never really set out to say I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. I just follow my intuitive hits and allow them to unfold. The way I got into acting was kind of interesting because I had never ever planned on doing that, and I've only been doing it for about 2 or 3 years now. But initially when the book started coming through me, I knew that I would need to be in front of people. And so that kind of scared me. I'm kind of an introverted person. I'm an outgoing introvert. And so I took a few speech classes. I did Toastmasters for a little while. And then I thought, maybe I'll try an acting class because that'll help me build confidence in being in front of people. And I did that, and I found out I really, really enjoyed it a lot. And through that class, I ended up getting some work. I ended up doing a few local commercials. I was in Nevada at the time, and that's when I did my first little short movie. And it just kind of came out of thin air as well, but I just knew that I was supposed to do these things and didn't know why, but I just knew that I was supposed to do it. There's this, overpowering feeling of that it was kind of a part of my path. And so I just followed that nudge. And it's amazing how doors open when we do that, And so for me, I'm just letting things unfold. Initially when the book started coming through me, I started kind of setting particular goals to try to maybe do things like the way that other authors did them, and I found out that I just kind of kept hitting walls because I wasn't doing it the way that I was supposed to do it, even though the way I was doing it was kind of an unknown for me. But I learned to really trust that, and ever since I did, it's been fantastic. So for me, I need to do everything. I enjoy doing a lot of different things, writing books, acting, doing children's stories, speaking, radio shows, you name it. And so for me, it's just all kind of around the same hub of just trying to be a good example for others and to maybe kind of help give others permission to step out of their comfort zones and to follow their intuition, because it's what has brought me tremendous fulfillment.
Yeah, it's the comfort zone thing. I'll probably touch on that shortly, but I have another question that I'm kind of burning to ask. But I will say we're in agreement on that as well, the comfort zone thing. People on the show know that I believe I found my passion by stepping outside my comfort zone and trying stand-up comedy, which kind of ironically, I performed 700 shows over 9 years, and I've been on hiatus for 2 years, and I'm performing tonight for the first time in 2 years. So, and I'm doing it more because I'm in a city. Well, I'm in Calgary, Alberta, and I haven't performed in Calgary, and it's one of those things that a good friend of mine from the East Coast, who was performing with me, one of my earlier troops, saw I was coming out to Alberta and said, "Hey, you should jump on the show that I do. It's a massive show. You got to give it a try." And so it's funny because I'm partly doing it because it's great to catch up with an old buddy, and secondly, it's funny, even though I'm on hiatus, one of the things I can never turn down is a chance to perform in a place I've performed before. So anyway, by stepping inside my passion, what happened was the comedy led to speaking, which is my true passion, and I would have never found it if I didn't step inside my comfort zone. So I want to delve into that, but before I do, one of the things that I think is kind of interesting, and maybe you've sort of seen a similar thing, but with social media today, and I'm kind of jumping in a different direction, but people talk to me about being a social media guru, and there's so many people online that say hire me and I'll take your brand to the next level. And so I'm first going to ask you about how important social media is to your brand, but secondly, and this is kind of the big question I'm driving at, is some of those same gurus that I talk to, and for right or wrong, I never try to judge them, but I see some of these gurus who say I can turn your social media brand on fire, and then I go to their Twitter account and they have 77 followers, and their Facebook and they have 120, and their LinkedIn they're less than 500 connections. And I know you and I probably both know it's about quality, not quantity. It's about who's talking about you, not how many likes you have. However, at the same time, if that person only has 120 likes, and they're trying to sell their social media services, I find it hard to be convinced that they're building their own brand in a level that they can help me build mine. Because even if you're going quality, you need at least 100 and some people to be active fans to build a business. So that concerns me. And then I noticed on your Facebook page, I was looking whenever we were scheduling things, and I'm like, wow, it's got like 17,000 Facebook fans, and he's not professing himself to be a social media guru. So how interesting is that? So my first question, I guess, is how important is social media? Or you can actually go in either order you want. And secondly, how do you kind of build that following? Because that's a pretty impressive following, like you say, for starting a number of years ago and not knowing the path you wanted to follow.
Well, thanks. I'm amazed at that, and I don't know really where it's kind of evolved from the numbers, because I don't know where they're coming from. I really haven't tried to grow it. It just kind of happened organically, and I'm really lucky. It's a very active page too. I think you can tell sometimes, like maybe you had mentioned, some people who have a lot of numbers on their business page or fan page, but there's not much interaction. I think a lot of those might have been purchased, those likes. And so I haven't, and it's a very active page, and I get a lot of people commenting and a lot of interesting emails from people, and so that's really nice. It makes me feel good that I'm making a difference. So it is interesting because it's hard for me social media is very important, obviously. And I kind of, early on, wasted a lot of money and energy and time trying to kind of do it like everybody else says you're supposed to do it. And so I finally just said, screw this, and I've done a little bit. I have a wonderful book publicist who's helping me, get on fantastic shows like yours and getting out there in a different way, which makes it easier for me. But the other stuff, gosh, I don't know. I don't use Twitter, although I have my Facebook linked to Twitter, and so I don't really try to develop that. I don't know. I'm trusting that my message is going to get out there however it's supposed to get out there, and it seems to be doing that without me really having to do a lot of things that feel maybe a little inauthentic to me. So I've just learned to try to be as authentic as I can and keep an open mind, because some of those things are valuable. But just really, whenever I make a decision, no matter what it is, I always run it through my intuitive filter and my heart filter and just see how it feels to me. And if it doesn't feel right, I don't do it. But if it does, I will. I'm the same with projects too. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it sounds like part of it might be, because like you said, it's, there's maybe no magic bullet of saying this is how it kind of happened the way it did. But maybe a part of it's the fact that you've been consistent getting your message out, because you do so many different things. Maybe you're reaching people through music. They hear you and say, I got to go check more out. Maybe it's the book getting out there. Maybe it's the blog. Like, in other words, maybe it's a matter of doing it, getting your message out over and over again consistently without putting anything on the results of what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. On the Facebook business page, I post a couple times a day and try to interact a little bit and be accessible for folks. And when my energy is right for it, other times when I need to take a break, I do. But yeah, with all the other stuff I'm doing, with the little movie shorts, the inspirational movie shorts that I've done and I'm doing, those just, all the different little things kind of help. And, they also find little different audiences too, which kind of maybe end up finding the other stuff that I'm doing. So I'm just trying to have fun and just do positive things, and it's letting it land the way it's supposed to.
Adventures with Corey.
So like I said, I do a lot of traveling, and just leave you with this thought. I actually I was staying in a hotel the other night, and I opened my door to come out of the hotel, and I noticed across the way somebody had, the Do Not Disturb sign. Well, I didn't realize Spanish for Do Not Disturb is No Moleste. And so many things started going through my head right now. Like, most importantly, I didn't put up the No Moleste sign. And so I woke up and, I realized that going forward I'm going to start reading the Expedia ads a little closer. So just in case you ever walk out and you see the No Moleste sign, make sure you put up your No Moleste sign. Thank you guys so much, and have a great rest of your night.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to this edition's Adventures with Corey. That clip you just heard was from my recent performance at a comedy show in Calgary, Alberta. I had been away from the stage for about 2 years, and I decided, because a friend had asked me, I decided to make my way back to the stage to perform just kind of a one-off, because I hadn't performed at this club in Calgary and was told it was such a great stage that I had to try. And even though I've been on hiatus for 2 years, I've been known to do that every now and then, where if I go into a different city or a club or a stage I haven't performed before, I'll come out of my retirement or a hiatus or whatever you want to call it, just to give it a try, and just to make sure that I still have the nerve, and just to take myself back outside of my comfort zone. Because I have to tell you that from the moment that I stepped out of the car until the minute I stepped on the stage, and in fact even until the minute I stepped off the stage, I was a bucket of nerves inside. People there probably wouldn't recognize it or know it. Even my friend that invited me to the show, I don't think he knew it was my first time back on stage in 2 years. But inside, wow, there was a mess going on. And so I have to, say, what a great adventure to go into a new comedy club you haven't been to in a while, to really know nobody in the club, to not know what the feel of the club is, the normal energy of the club is. And, we're talking a club that, in this case, that I think there were, 110 or 120 people at the show. That's a pretty big show for Canadian comedy, for a Monday night especially. And so what an adventure. I found myself on my way to Calgary. I purposely went the night before to perform at this show, and I arrived at the club. I was driving by, I saw my buddy standing outside, and as soon as I did, it reminded me that I'm going to be performing stand-up fairly soon, and the butterflies just started. And all the way to the club, even in my head, I'm like, oh, should I still do this? Maybe I should just find an excuse. And I I went right back to that first day I tried to perform stand-up comedy, and that stepping outside of my comfort zone moment, and am I going to be able to do this, and what's going to happen when I get on stage, and the unknown. And so I got to the club, and I basically just kind of did everything I could to make sure that I forced myself to stay in the club until it was time to jump on the stage. And I did my material, all brand new stuff, never tried before, and I survived. That's really the message I want to share with you here, is that it was like starting over again in comedy, but I survived just like I did the first time around, and that's what kept me in the club, this time around as well. And for me, the adventure itself was that, that whole experience of not knowing what was going to happen, and the unknown, of sitting inside this club that I hadn't been in before, and watching 100 and some other people watching a show and deciding whether or not they would laugh at your material, and whether or not your material in their mind was worthy of laughing. So if you get this opportunity to step yourself, to step outside the comfort zone for yourself, highly recommend it. If you want to try it with stand-up, cue me up, get in touch with me, and I'll see what I can do to help set things up for you. If you want to get into public speaking, professional speaking, communication, or even just conquer your fears, stand-up comedy is a great starting point. So it helped me out. I think it would help you out as well. Let me know if you ever want to try it, and either way, if not, feel free to live through me and my failings whenever I jump on stage, and my successes when I jump on stage.
Mary Jane Allen, financial healer and radio show host on Transformation Talk Radio. Mary Jane dedicates her life to helping people by curing their behaviors which produce unwanted financial outcomes. To learn more, go to manifestyourlifedream.com.
Can you tell us maybe some of the common, little-known facts or myths or what have you about finances, and about how to successfully manifest what you want in your life?
For sure, Corey. There are a lot of societal beliefs that we take on as we're growing up. They come from our parents, our ancestors, just society in general. And what happens is they become what I call soul-level wounds.
No, and I didn't.
Because the healing I do is at the level of the soul. So essentially, when we have these soul-level wounds, we're seeing our world and, everything around us, including our money, through what I call a set of goggles that are essentially have misbelief as a filter. We're just not seeing the truth of things. Oftentimes, it can be about fear of visibility, fear of, being judged for having money. There are so many examples I can give you as to what people come into me and have in their Akashic record as a soul-level wound around money. But, there's a common phrase about artists, that if you're an artist, you must be a starving artist. If you're an artist and you're in your life purpose, you're not going to be a starving artist. That's simply a misbelief. It's a societal misbelief. A lot of the things that happen in terms of children is their parents are, programming them to keep them safe in the world. And a lot of times, it's issues around money that we don't even realize we're hearing from our parents. Things like, you have to work hard for money. Money doesn't grow on trees. Don't draw attention to yourself because, if you have money, then you could be hurt, and it's essentially there are a lot of bad habits that people come in with their money that need to be healed as well. And what I mean by that is, if you are in lack, if you're having a lack of money and, you're essentially thinking about lack and so on, you're going to be avoiding looking at your bank account, avoiding looking at your bills. Basically, some people, have huge debt that they run up. They worry about not having enough money for retirement. It's just kind of a big circle, a big cyclical basic mess sometimes that people come in with. There are so many misbeliefs, and they all feed onto each other. And, the misbeliefs cause the behaviors, and then the behaviors are what prevent us from attracting the money that we absolutely are meant to have.
Up next, we have first part of the conversation with Angela Ray, acupuncture entrepreneur. Go to angelaray.ca. That's Angela-RAE.ca. Here is Angela Ray.
Thank you, Angela Ray, for joining us on the Conversations with Passion radio show. And perhaps I'll get you to start by telling us a bit about your background for our listeners, just to get a feel for why you jumped into the industry you did, what industry you're in, and how it all kind of came together.
Okay. Well, thanks for having me. It's kind of a long journey, how I ended up here, but I don't believe it was by accident by any means. It's my second career. I was in the management field for, well, I won't say how many years, but a number of years, and it was kind of sucking the life out of me. So in my mid-30s, thought, what can I do that is something that I can take into retirement, not even retire from, and help people in a in a different way, just have more impact in people's lives. So my namesake, my Uncle Ray, had developed cancer, and he sought traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture instead of Western medicine. So that was sort of the first that I had heard about traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture. And then, years later, my mom received help through acupuncture with managing fibromyalgia symptoms. And so I just saw the power of what acupuncture can do, and decided to pursue that as a new career. So
very cool. So,
yeah.
And so thus far, how has it been? Has it been what you expected, all you expected, different from what you expected?
Probably more than what I expected. Going back to school in my, early 40s was a challenge, being a wife and mom. But every day, I get back, from my clients, probably as much as I give.
So it's turned out to be at least as good and perhaps a little better than you thought it would be. And
exactly.
So our show, obviously it has the name Passion right in it. So I have to ask you, do you feel that this is your passion? And if it is, do you feel it's important for a person to follow their passion?
Oh, totally. I at a young age, you go to school and it's like, what shall I be, when I grow up? And, my mom was in the healthcare profession, and I had a lot of people say to me, oh, are you going to grow up and be a nurse just like your mother? And I was like, no, definitely not doing that. Had wanted, to be a career woman, but I think innately, that just wasn't, I was great at management, but I was always told I was too sensitive, that I needed to get a thicker skin, all those things, and that's who I am. And so when you start thinking you need to change who you are at the core to be able to do a job, you kind of think, okay, maybe it's not me, it's the job, right? So I think this is a perfect, blend or balance with who I am at the core. So I think it's very important that you do follow your passion.
Awesome. And I guess then I'll go one step further and say, so you launched the business and you're following your passion. One of the things that I find interesting is that there's so many entrepreneurs out there that struggle with the challenge of how overwhelming it all can be early on in your business. And so I guess my question is, if we look at the online side, like social media and the website aspect and all that kind of stuff, in the world you're in, I'm sure there's conceivably some that don't have any presence online whatsoever. So how important to you is the whole online component of having a business, and has that been something that you adapted to well, that you found challenging, or how's it all played out for you?
Well, I have a business degree in marketing and management. That's what I chose to take right out of high school. And, I guess I come by it honestly, I have a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. And so I wanted to do it right, I guess, in the business sense, I wanted to do it right. So I just ask all kinds of people that I knew sort of in my circle of influence, someone who, was a marketing consultant who referred me to a web designer who, it just kind of snowballs. People and you just ask for help. And so early on, I did get help, with creating a website and, the social media, I will say, for me is, I think it's important. I probably don't give it enough attention. But I find, too, that word of mouth and just meeting people, like when I'm at the grocery store or when I'm shopping with my daughter, the clerk that's, at the counter. And that's how I have, met a lot of my clientele.
So with the field you're in, do you find that there's, I guess, obviously there are a lot of benefits to probably the wellness side, the healing side, and even the relaxation side. So perhaps can you share a couple with us of things you've noticed that are benefits for people that are willing to, go into that experience, and for some maybe they're nervous about it but still do it anyway. Are there some benefits that you've seen personally or professionally that you can attribute directly back to that, like Chinese medicine and acupuncture and stuff?
Yeah, totally. People say, oh, acupuncture, well, what does that do? And so I always say, well, the short answer is it can help with everything. The long answer is, insomnia, depression, anxiety. It can help with stress reduction, infertility, all kinds of chronic, fatigue, fibromyalgia. It's really effective for pain conditions. So, the World Health Organization recognizes acupuncture to help over 100 diseases. So, it's pretty cool when, you're able to help somebody get out of pain, and it's not me that's doing that, it's the acupuncture. The body already has the ability to heal itself, and you're just sort of helping it along. So that's one of the cool things, is to be able to help a client, further along.
Wow. And so I guess then, on the benefit side, I also think about, as far as people, I would say a big challenge these days for people is focus and trying to do everything with lack of sleep. It seems to be like we're in a double-edged sword world now, where we're too busy to keep up, and at the same time we try to make ourselves even busier. So sleep has obviously become more and more crucial, and I would say one step further is getting focused sleep, whatever that might be, in other words, uninterrupted sleep. So how does acupuncture play a really big part in that? Have you seen a lot of benefits of people being able to sleep a lot better? Or
well, it certainly does help, clients with insomnia. But for my practice, which I'm just speaking for myself, is I do a lot of kind of counseling, just because I've been there, as I'm not a counselor, mind you, but I've been there, like I said, mom, wife, full-time worker, even going back to school, I still worked, during that whole process. So I understand being overscheduled. 85% of, acupuncture clients are female. So, you can pretty much connect, on that level. And it's okay to take a break, right? Even this week, a couple of clients said to me they feel that they're lazy, right? Well, traditional Chinese medicine practice is taking time out to get out in the fresh air, to just breathe, to eat healthfully. Today's society, we're scheduled to the max. Even our kids' activities, we're not allowed. Our kids don't know, how to relax, right? Some parents don't let their kids just hang out. They don't know how to just relax. So I think that's the first step in helping with, sleep, is just winding down, staying away from the electronics, a couple hours before bed, and reading a book and taking a bath, having a tea.
No, that makes complete sense. And, it's funny when you talk about technology. One of the things that I share often is that in the course of the world we're in, we've had the opportunity to interview a lot of high achievers. And one of the things that we've noticed is that these high achievers have found a way to kind of be completely all in, and so turn the technology off. And I wonder sometimes if their productivity is rooted in the fact that they can actually break away from that technology and have moments of silence, if you will. So one of the things that I noticed recently, I was at I forget what the park's called. I think it's Victoria Park in Truro, and we were at the park and we were walking around, and there was this area where it was like gorgeous waterfalls, just a stream of water coming down where you could sit on a bench and watch. And I'll never forget this. There were two kids sitting there typing on their phones. I think one was playing actually a Nintendo DS, and the other one was typing on their phone. And they're actually sitting within distance of the water hitting them. So literally the water of this gorgeous place is hitting them, and even the water hitting them from this gorgeous scenery that they're not looking at couldn't take them away from the focus they had on the video game and the phone.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be detrimental to us, like later on, like these kids. My daughter's soccer team, we were joking as parents because the girls wouldn't talk to each other, about how I got the ball or whatever, and it's just like we were all going to give them like iPods so that they could text each other that they got the ball. So anyway, it was just kind of they don't know how to communicate. Like, it's a novel idea to pick up the phone and call a friend. It's just like I can't text them. So anyway, I think the whole technology thing is important, and it has its place. It's wonderful. FaceTime and connecting, through Facebook, say, with old family members and friends you've lost, and I think it's great. But there's a time and place, and so, I think it's important to have time out for yourself and as a family, and to exercise. If you exercise, you're 33% more productive than the next guy. So,
it's so funny. You're right. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to be able to interview so many people that I get to kind of see what seems to work well and what seems to not work as well. And one of the things I'm an advocate of in terms of people that are in roles that are really demanding, really high-paced, and they do have a bunch of stuff coming at them all day. I'm a big believer in the power of blocking out time. So, in other words, maybe you spend 3 hours in back-to-back meetings, and maybe that fourth hour is blocked out for your phone. So that if you don't feel the pressure during those 3 hours to have your phone on and be at it the whole time, but then when you're on it and focused for that one extra hour, you feel actually happier that you were able to focus on it completely and then not pay attention to those things that you were paying attention to in the meeting. So, place the meeting time when you're with people, in front of people, on them, and then place the technology time on them. And I found those people are more productive than the ones that try to juggle both at the same time.
Yeah, totally. Like I'm a schedule freak. I probably have been called that. But yeah, to be present, and live in the moment. So, you're at the breakfast table, we're at the breakfast table, no cell phones. Just when company's here, who cares if the dishes are in the sink? Like, just be, try to be in the moment. So, because so much is passing us by.
Oh, absolutely. And it's so funny you say that. One of the things that I think is really powerful, and, I wish a lot of people got this, but the idea that I think it's kind of ironic, I guess I'll say, that you talk to some people who, they'll tell you, or their spouses will tell you, that when they're at the office, they tell people at the office, I got to leave the phone on, and they tell customers too, because I could have an emergency from home. And I got, in other words, I got to dedicate some of this time to home. But then when they get home, they say, I got to leave the phone on because somebody from the office could call.
Might call.
And so the question, the question is, who's getting your actual attention?
Yeah.
If you're giving your home time away to the office, you're giving your office time away to home.
Yeah.
You can't tell me that most people can't see from a mile away that you could be more effective and productive if you're focused and all in for each of those things for what they are supposed to be.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
One of the things I noticed on your website is that you noted in your bio, or it was noted in your bio, that you're a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
And I think that's very powerful because, again, going back to what we've noticed as common traits, is we've noticed, and you'll probably be happy to hear this, that the high achievers, and we're talking everybody from David Suzuki to Jack Canfield to T. Harv Eker, one of the things that I've noticed is that, and it's the third most common trait when we ran the numbers, one of the most common traits among those people is that they've dedicated themselves to lifelong learning. And it comes up over and over again from the people that have more impact in their life and more impact on others, are the people that are willing to continually self-develop and continue to learn. So why do you think, from your perspective, why do you feel learning is so important, and why, for you, what kind of, I guess, gives you that little boost to keep on wanting to learn? Like, what do you get from it, if you will, that makes you want to keep doing it?
Tune in to the next episode where we will have the rest of the interview with Angela Ray, and you will hear the answer to that question. Up next, we have a segment of Before the Mic with Corey Poirier. This week, David Suzuki.
Hi, everybody. I'm Corey Poirier, and this is our very first edition of Before the Mic. Now, Before the Mic is an offshoot of our Conversations with Passion radio show. And where the idea came from is people have been asking me, can you share some stories behind the scenes, what took place before the interview, what took place behind the scenes during the interview. And so I thought this is a really good format to do that. So being the very first edition of Before the Mic, I thought we're airing tomorrow our interview with Dr. David Suzuki, so why not share a story related to that interview? The interview with Dr. David Suzuki, I thought I'd share a quick little story about that interview. An interview that took roughly 18 months to schedule, an interview that I was in Alberta, Edmonton, working with clients, training and speaking until the Tuesday before our Thursday scheduled interview. And in Edmonton, while I was out there, it snowed for 61 hours. I made it to the airport 1 minute late, 1 minute after check-in time, and so I had to be rerouted. My normal flight was simply from Edmonton to Toronto to PEI. Instead, because I missed my flight and I had to reschedule, it changed to Edmonton, to Calgary, to Winnipeg, to Toronto, to Halifax, and then a 3-hour drive to PEI. So you might think that's the story, is just that I cut it close. If it was the story, I wouldn't have delivered it so quickly. So the big part to the story is that even though I went through all that, the interview itself, I was there just shy of 24 hours in advance of the interview. The interview itself went off without a hitch. The recording, we didn't have any issues there. And so the interview was done, and I was feeling on top of the world. Out of thousands of interviews, this was just like a lot of them. It was a very exciting interview. And I was kind of on top of the world that it actually ran smoothly. I mean, that's always what you hope for. And so I thought, this is a great accomplishment. And once again, on top of the world, until I was out of David's earshot, and I was talking to the waitress, and she said, "Oh my God, that was David Suzuki, and I can't believe I didn't break character." And I didn't realize this girl was so starstruck because she didn't break character, because she didn't make this big fuss about David. And I think that probably made him feel well, too, that she didn't make this big deal and say, "Could I take a picture?" But she said, "Oh my God, I had a hard time containing myself." And then she stopped, and without missing a beat, looked at me and said, "Well, if you were interviewing David Suzuki, you must be somebody. You must be somebody." And of course, my mother thinks I'm somebody, but this comment, "You must be somebody," any kind of, I guess you could say, tiny ego that was built up by this big accomplishment that took 18 months in the making was completely deflated by the comment, "You must be somebody, are you?" So I'm Corey Poirier. This has been Before the Mic.
Up next, we have a man who has been referred to as the world's #1 small business guru. Michael believes that to truly flourish, a small business must touch the lives of each of its 4 primary influencers: customers, employees, suppliers, and lender shareholders. He personally leads a business startup incubator called The Dreaming Room, a 2.5-day training that is held throughout the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. To learn more, go to michaelgerbercompanies.com. Here is Michael Gerber.
Welcome, Michael Gerber, to the Conversations with Passion radio show. And perhaps, Michael, for our listeners who may not be familiar with your background, I don't know how they wouldn't be, but just in case, maybe you could give us a bit of your background about perhaps how you got into the EMIS and how you got into the world that you find yourself in today as well.
Oh, my goodness, Corey. We're going back to that far. This is a long story. I'll make it short. Okay. I got into this world in a surprising way, and I've remained in this world in a even more surprising way. A friend of mine introduced me to a small business owner years and years and years ago. This is in 1975, and said to me, "Michael, Bob has a problem converting the leads that my advertising agency is creating for him, and he doesn't know what to do about it." And I told my friend, who owned that small advertising agency. I had no idea why he thought I could help, because I didn't know anything about business, and because, as well, I didn't know anything about what was referred to as high tech. It was a technology startup his client owned and ran. But my buddy said, Michael, you know more than you think you do. Just spend the time. Let's see what happens. So I agreed to do that. And he took me to meet Bob, and he introduced Bob to me and me to Bob. And then my buddy said, look, I'm taking off for an hour. Get to know each other. Let's see what happens. Well, it was a shock to me and a shock to Bob, but we made do. And essentially, I started that meeting with Bob with two assumptions. First, I don't know anything about business, because I knew I didn't. And secondly, that Bob did, because he owned one. And so we began the conversation, Bob asking me the question, Michael, what do you know about my business? Nothing, Bob. And when that became a consternation on his face, well, what do you know about my products? Less than that, Bob. Well, how can you help me if you don't know anything about my business and anything about my products? And I said, I haven't a clue, Bob. But my buddy thinks I can. And since we have an hour to kill, let's figure out why I'm here. And that's how this whole thing began. Figuring out why I'm here, figuring out what's missing in this picture, what I call the entrepreneurial question for all time. What's missing in this picture? What's missing in this picture, Bob? And as I began to ask Bob questions, the two assumptions that I started out with were in fact turned on their ear, because I did learn that I do know something about business, and that was that selling is a system. But you got to understand, in my life prior to this extraordinary event, my meeting with Bob, I had been a salesman of encyclopedias. I'd been a framer of houses. I had been a jazz saxophone player. And in each of those instances, each of the guys who taught me how to do what I was about to do, sell encyclopedias, frame houses, play the saxophone, each of them were masters at teaching me the system for doing each and every one of those things. Without a system, I'd be at a loss. Without a system, Bob was at a loss. Without a system, every small business owner on the face of this earth is at a loss. And that's what I've discovered in all these years, that everybody is at a loss, and that they're at a loss because they don't understand what a systems perspective or a systems state of mind really brings to bear on anything and everything you decide to do. So that's how I came to be who I am, now the author of 18 books. You might call them E-Myth books, and they're E-Myth books, which means the entrepreneurial myth, because in fact I discovered in beginning to work with Bob, and then with the tens of thousands of small business clients we have worked with over the years, that most of them, the vast majority of them, were not entrepreneurs as everybody thought they were, but what I came to call technicians suffering from an entrepreneurial seizure. They started a business to create a job for themselves. And it's a lousy job because they're working for a lunatic. So how to alter that whole thing has been my driving mission. And I have learned so very much in doing that. The universality of the problems that every single individual small business owner faces, and every human being on the face of this earth, that there is a universal solution to what is considered to be a very unique problem. That none of these problems that people suffer from are unique. In fact, they are resolvable by taking a universal approach to them. It's understanding that and truly, truly, truly taking that in that's the most remarkable thing I've ever seen. Hope that helps.
Wow. Oh, it certainly does, Michael. And where to go from there? I have a big question about the idea that anybody or any business can put a system in place. And I completely agree with that. I spent a number of years in the world of stand-up comedy, as they say, not for the faint at heart. And I've watched the comics that actually had a system in place before they got to the stage, and even while they were on the stage, have a lot more success than the comics that just were winging it, if you will. So do you feel that, you mentioned any business, do you feel that in any walk of life we can systemize our life?
Well, it's not to systemize our life. That sounds terribly dead and mechanical. And in fact, the whole thought of a system in the way that we think about it sounds dead and mechanical, when in fact it's exactly the opposite of that. What I'm really saying is that it's not our life that we're systematizing. It's the product of our life. And so what we have to understand is the relationship between I am and what I create. I am is quite an extraordinary statement because there is nothing more true than that. I am. Not I am a comedian, I am a jerk, I am lost, I am lovely. Not that, but I am. With nothing more added, I am. In this great book, I Am That, which is the beginning of I Am That, which I am. In that great book, one discovers this most extraordinary experience of I am. Now, having said that, which is a transformational reality for everyone who begins to say, I am, you can begin to experience it even as you say it, I am. You then begin to understand the system is what I am creates. And each and every one of us live a life. If we're born in the image of God, it's said, then we're born to create. It is that which we create that calls for a system. Because until that which we create becomes a system, it's not scalable. And if it's not scalable, it's not growable. And if it's not growable, it dies a very lonely death. Where? In me. So if you, as a stand-up comic, I am a comedian, you understand what I mean?
Yes, I do.
And all of your identification is with being a comedian, I'm suggesting you lose the most significant opportunity, which is to go to work on being a comedian, to invent what it means to be a comedian so that you can scale it, which means you can create a school for comedians, which means you can create a system for comedians, which means you can create and on and on and on and on. You follow?
I do.
And suddenly that brings about a whole leveraged way of thinking economically. And so go on, I'm sorry. I could go on and I won't. Ask.
No worries at all. So I guess I'm curious then, why do you think, based on all these years of experience, Michael, why do you think more people don't get away from being the technician, if you will?
Well, because they've never learned the difference. They have never been introduced to this idea. Their teachers didn't know this. Their parents didn't know this. Their peers didn't know this. Their schools didn't know this. Their bosses didn't know this. Their experts didn't know this. In short, it's a very, very, very thing. And when you begin to go back and look at the way you were raised, you begin to understand it. Nobody ever told you this before. That was the astonishing realization that I had. Nobody had ever told me this before, but I happened to have had the experience of 3 very significant people in my life, each of whom lived this, albeit as technicians, not as entrepreneurs. So understand, each of them had a practice called a practice of selling encyclopedias, called a practice of framing houses, meaning a practice of teaching the saxophone. Each of them had a practice that, in fact, was a system. But they didn't understand that the practice is the first step in an evolution of growth. The second step is a business. The third step is an enterprise. So once you turnkey the practice, for you to evolve, you must go on to the next step. The practice is the technician, the business is the manager, and the enterprise is the entrepreneur. So suddenly you realize there's a hierarchy of growth. And the minute you understand that, the minute you can see that, transcend that from above, you immediately understand what's missing in this picture. The technician becomes lost in doing it, busy, in billable hours, in new customers, in new sales, in whatever in the world that practice is all about, that self-employment is all about. What he doesn't understand, however, is that there is another perspective that's being called out here, that is working on it, not just working in it. Working on it to invent the system through which to grow it. Few technicians are interested in growth. They're interested in more. They're interested in more customers. They're interested in making more money. They're interested in being paid more per hour. They're interested in the technician's world. You understand, they're different worlds. The world of the technician is different from the world of the manager, is different from the world of the entrepreneur. And so my job has been awakening the entrepreneur within every technician to make him or her see suddenly that there is another world than the world you're living in, and it's accessible to you from where you are. All you need to do is to awaken the entrepreneur within, and you suddenly can transcend where you are in order to be able to transform where you are. But it calls for growth, and it calls for the eradication of fear, and it calls for the installation of imagination. And it calls for, which arises naturally by the very state of what I'm saying to you, it calls for passion, a desire for growth, a desire for exceeding where you are, a desire for discovery, a passion for what, in fact, can evolve from this extraordinary realization. First, the epiphany, the insight, the inspiration from which all passion arises. Without that epiphany, there is no passion. The passion is only then the passion of senses.
The Passion of Senses. Corey went on to ask Michael Gerber what would be his personal message to the listeners of Conversation with Passion.
Come dream with me. Discover your dream, your vision, your purpose, and your mission. I'll help you to do that. I'll help you to discover it, and then I'll help you to turn it into a practice, and then I'll help you to turn that into a business, and then I'll help you to turn that into an enterprise. And it's a system, stupid. It's a system. It's a system, and it's a universal system. It will work in Rwanda. It will work in South Africa. It will work in Hong Kong. It will work in India, work any country, any state, any city, any place in the world. It is already doing that. Is that not extraordinary?
That is extraordinary. And so, Michael, you just give me a perfect segue to what my final question always is, and that is, how can we now get engaged? So you just said you've invited us to come dream with you. So now my question is, how can people learn more if they want to come dream with you?
All they need to do, and this is all they need to do, is to write down my personal email address. And my personal email address comes to me, to no one else. It's Michael, Michael, that's my first name, at michaelegerber.com. Michael at michaelegerber.com. And tell me where you heard me. So you tell them, Corey, where they heard me, and they'll then write that down in their email to me. Michael, I want to come dream with you. That's all they have to say. And I'll tell them exactly how to do it.
Well, everyone, there you have it. The latest episode of the Conversations with Passion radio show. As per normal, 3 takeaways from this very episode. The ones that really spoke to me from the episode, and as always, I hope these spoke to you as well as other clips and moments as well. But the 3 moments that really spoke to me, first from our conversation with Brian Benson, whenever he talked about social media and how he's just simply focused on growing it holistically, letting it grow on its own and just basically doing his own thing with it and just being authentic and allowing it to do its own thing. And as I noted during our interview with Brian, he has unheard of engagement percentages. So obviously it seems to be working. I also like our conversation with Angela Ray whenever she talked about being in the moment and how when they have friends and family over, they even focus on the fact that they don't need to put the dishes in the sink right away. That the moments that they have with the people that are over are perhaps more important than worrying about if the dishes are in the sink right away as soon as they're done eating. And also how she mentioned that they take time to break away from technology when family and friends are over or whenever they're at the dinner table. It's a no smartphone zone, if you will. So I love that as well. I love to see some people taking the power back when it comes to that. And then finally, during our conversation with Michael Gerber of the E-Myth, I love a lot of what Michael shared during his interview, but I love the fact that he talks so elegantly about the power of changing our perspective when it comes to owning and operating a business. I can't obviously do it justice in this short a time span, but the interview itself, I love what Michael shared about the idea that you need to change your perspective if you want to find out all you can be and be all you can be as it relates to entrepreneurship. So until next time, guys, I'm Corey Poirier.
Thank you for tuning into our show. Go to conversationwithpassion.com to learn more about the show or to sign up for email updates. Go to CoreyPoirier.com to learn how to bring Corey in to speak at your event. We'd like to thank the following friends of CWP. Legacy Junction, live your light. Go to LegacyJunction.com. Bren Daniel Productions, project management training. Go to brendaniel.ca. Oxford Learning, never stop learning. Go to oxfordlearning.com. Permadry, guaranteed solutions for leaky basements. Go to permadry.com. Capable, confident women. When you're in alignment in your personal life, everything flows effortlessly. Go to capableconfidentwomen.com. Realtor Tracy Rudolph, opening the door to your new home. Go to tracyrudolph.ca. And blogger Emily Fisher. Go to emilylynnfisher.com. Thanks again for tuning in. On behalf of Corey Poirier, I am Marco Kelly, and this has been Conversations with Passion.